You know, why don't we just do that? All right. First, we have Veronique Zayas, creator and director of Patchwork Studio and co-owner of Emerald Republic. Veronique, would you like to talk about yourself real quick?
Sure. So I guess in context of what we're talking about here today, I run Patchwork Studio. We're a team, a massive team of 3 full-time people plus a handful of people we partner with. Like, for example, we're very strong on building connections in our community and working with people that are local here. We work with Rachel when we need development. She's amazing. And we focus on branding. So it really is branding first, but we will talk about a lot of things today. Like, that's not everything we do, even though that's kind of what we show the world. This time around, I have been solo for 6 years. Prior to that, I kind of jumped ship at a place and did it the completely wrong way. I went solo for 2 years and didn't really know what I was doing at the time and learned that very quickly. So kind of went on full time for a couple years and then took the leap back into entrepreneurship, being a little bit wiser the second time around. So.
And next we have Rachel Zampino, lead designer at Hogue Studio and freelance designer. Rachel, why don't you talk to me for a minute about who you are?
I'm Rachel Zampino. I am a designer at Hogue Studio, where we do primarily web development, web design. I also do freelance design on the nights and weekends, so basically work 24/7. So with my full-time job, I primarily get to do web design and UI, UX kind of stuff, and then for freelance, like Veronique said, I do more development and also branding side of things. So it's an interesting mix to be able to kind of like work on both sides of the field. I think I can provide an interesting perspective since I both work in-house and freelance and kind of get the best of both worlds of each situation. So hopefully be sharing some of that with you guys later. Ooh.
And then last but not least, we have Rachel Hogue, freelance designer and co-founder of Long Hollow Creatives. Rachel?
Hi. Well, we just wanted to confuse you by having 2 Rachels. But hi, welcome everyone. As you know, my name's Rachel. But I actually went freelance fairly recently. I went freelance a year and a half ago. Before that, I was working at Innisfree Hotels for about 4 years as the director of content production. So basically an assortment of titles from like creative director to lead designer. And actually Morgan used to work with me, and now she's taken over a lot of the roles that I had there. So still pretty new to this, but I'm gonna share what I learned with you guys.
Nice, nice. Before we move on, I want to see where you guys are at in your career. If you guys are working in-house for a company, raise your hands. All right. Side hustling. Second hustle. Okay, we got a couple and then a wave. All right. And then full-time freelancing. All right, so you guys came here, boom, there we go. So we guys came here to figure out how to get there. Awesome. Well, we're gonna go around the room and introduce everybody, your name and what they do. Since you're right here, you go first.
My name is Lindsay Curley. I work at Mark Graphics and I'm graphic artist.
Okay, I'm Andrew Velasco. I am a designer, and that's all I want to share.
I am Jessica Edwards, and I team marketing and graphic design for Great Southern Restaurants.
I'm Shitra Carroll. I work for Alpha Agency. I'm
and I am a team of one for the Early Learning Coalition. I do all the marketing, design, advertising, and fundraising for the agency.
My name is Maria Walker. I am the senior designer at Institute Hotels, and I run my side business, Desi Designs, on site.
Hey, I'm Angel, and I work from home for a company named I'm sorry, actually it's Cognitive Data System. And really ready to dive into freelance work.
Nice, nice. Well, give all yourselves a round of applause for being here. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and get into some questions, get this started. Veronique, or V as I call her, Rachel, Zaps, and Rachel Hogue. I haven't figured out your nickname yet, but it's gonna happen. What does your workload consist of? Types of projects, ad or social codes? What's your work consist of? What do you guys do? What's your workload?
Okay, so we focus on branding definitely, but that kind of snowballs out of control and ends up sticking its little fingers in everything. So my background's pretty heavy across multiple industries. So I started off in print and then went into point of sale and then went into website and kind of social, and then ended up going heavy into brand when I went on my own. So making that shift into kind of expanding our workload out and having experience and all those sorts of things really helped a lot. So we do a lot of brand work, but that ends up being a lot of ongoing work for clients, and that ends up going into their websites and going into now kind of social content creation. But we also do a lot of the stuff that is kind of pays the bill stuff. So we have solid relationships with a couple really large agencies. And like yesterday, I probably spent half my day working on a PowerPoint presentation to pitch a client for them. You know, and they're working with large national clients and Anheuser-Busch companies and IPG companies and things like that. But I think that's a lot of what people don't really talk about, because there is this stuff that, you know, we're working on these really cool brand projects, but we're also working on that kind of stuff that's ongoing, stable work that pays the bills.
Yeah, so I kind of talked about mine a little bit earlier, but I primarily do web design at Hill Studio, and we've kind of the same thing with digital products. It ends up expanding into, so you want a new website. Why do you want a new website? What's wrong with it? And then it ends up getting boiled down further to they're not really happy with their brand or their messaging or content or whatever. So we a lot of times end up going back to kind of square one and starting a rebrand process with a lot of our clients. So we do everything from the initial strategy, content writing, branding, all the way to the website design, development, and then sometimes afterwards we help them kind of like get the site launched, run the SEO, ads, social media, that kind of stuff, helping our clients get off the ground. So we do a lot of kind of weird random projects too. Ideally, most of our projects would just be branding and web, but like Veronique said, you have to do what pays the bills sometimes, so it's kind of all over the place. But as a freelancer, you kind of get to pick and choose some of that stuff a little bit, but you also got to pay the bills. So.
Yeah, well, I kind of have a mixed bag as well. I mean, ideally, right, the fun projects are branding and, you know, even web design is a lot of fun, but I get a lot of print material requests, so I do a lot of annual reports. I also do a lot of booklet designs. I do a ton of one-off things. So thankfully I have several ongoing clients that I started branding with them, so I kind of execute from there. We went through the whole branding process, web design process, so then now any kind of print materials, social media needs that they have, I do. So I think with freelance, you really have to be open to trying out a lot of different things, and you learn a lot through that. You learn what you're good at and what you're not necessarily good at. And so I've been very grateful to have the clients I have. I mean, not every project is super fun, but it makes the ones that are fun feel really worthwhile whenever you get them, rather than just taking them for granted.
All right. How do you approach creating a business plan for future growth and sustainability?
All right, want the first one here again? All right, that's it. Okay, so, I mean, I think the first thing before you're like, I want to go and, you know, leave, whatever your goals are, you know, like, what is the whole point of what you're trying to do? Like, are you wanting it to go full-time? Are you wanting to just be able to do something on the side to have supplemental income? Are you looking for something that's like more fulfilling for yourself because you're not quite getting it work and you really want to, you know, get into more illustration work, whatever that is? But I think as far as anytime you're talking about creating a business plan, like what are your goals and what are you trying to work towards in a couple of years? So if that goal is like, I want to be able to work for myself to travel more, then, you know, Michael Janda has a great process for figuring out what your income needs to be and how much you need to be making to support that, and take into all your taxes into account and everything. If you're wanting to actually build a company, then you need to figure out, you know, how much money you're going to need to be making, plus other people's salaries, plus their taxes, plus their health care, whatever that is. But the main thing is, like, I think having a goal in mind as far as like, this is, I want to build a company, I want to stay solo, whatever that is, and, you know, what it comes down to is basically the money behind it and how much you need to be making to make that happen. And if it could be financial, it could be like having more free time. Those are two very different lifestyles as far as freelancing. And kind of having that in mind first, like what your priority is.
So I think one of the most important things in terms of building a business plan is creating a runway for yourself, especially if you're going to dive full-time into freelancing. At least I would say a 3-month runway of what you think you figure out what you need to essentially survive. All your bills, food, groceries, all that stuff, figure out what that number is and what number you have to hit, and then save up that money for, I would say, at least 3 months to make sure that if you're kind of having a low spot or you're not getting many clients, that you're not going to freak out and panic or have to take on work that you really don't want to do just because you're in a bad spot. I think that's really the key to like keep things moving forward, and also putting your work out on social media and other ways for people to actually see you and get noticed, and kind of like planting those seeds for the future, networking with other people, attending events like this. Things like that you can do to just kind of like plant those seeds, and then eventually, you know, I meet people, and then maybe it might be a year or two later that they finally end up coming back to me for a project. So just kind of forward thinking, I guess, would be my answer.
Well, business plans are really important things, and I think as creative thinkers, we kind of tend to shy away from the more business side, and that's something that I've learned a great deal about in the past year and a half. Is that one podcast I listened to put it this way, is that owning your own business is like the Thunderdome of personal development, right? So your weaknesses and your personality are going to translate to your weaknesses in your business. And I'm really a risk-adverse person. Like, I don't know if any of y'all do personality tests and do the Enneagram. Really interesting. But I'm a 6, by the way. And that's like super fear-based, like risk-adverse. So I actually, thankfully, built up a huge runway for myself, because I was like, I'm too scared. So I actually had to have someone kind of push me off that. So I think having people that kind of keep you growing and challenging you are very important to keep pushing those limits, but also people that are going to push you to make sure you do it in a smart way. So not only do you need that runway, but you kind of should establish a base of clients before you leave full time. So the way that you do that, I mean, everyone has different ways of getting their first clients. The way that I did was kind of just being known for a track record of being responsible and being a good worker and then you tell the people surrounding you that you're looking for work, and then word kind of gets around, and all of my work in the past year and a half has been referral based. So, I mean, that is on me for not building more of a web presence, but thankfully I have had wonderful people in my life to push people my way for business, and keeping those relationships alive is really important. Another tip that I would have is kind of diversify. So initially kind of do a lot of different things and have clients in a lot of different areas, in a lot of different industries. So a lot of my clients actually are not in Pensacola. They're in California and Colorado, and they're in the medical field, which is something that I feel like I shied away from to begin with, but it's actually, they're my most stable clients, and I've probably gotten the most money from them over the time that I've been freelance. So don't be afraid of taking on clients that might not be creative, because chances are they're very stable and will come back to you time and time again.
That's a question.
Yes, you can.
Cool. If you have any tips, or how do you really reach out to other markets besides Pensacola? Like you said, you have clients in California.
Yeah.
How do you find that work and then develop those relationships with them?
Yeah. Well, for me, actually, it was through connections here that they had. So funnily enough, my previous boss actually had connections because she's a CMO. So she was connected to a lot of CMOs from around the country. So when she knew that because I had that good relationship with her when leaving and I didn't burn my bridges, she was very happy to connect me with her network. And her network was across the country, and from working with one client there and doing a good job and keeping a good relationship, they then referred me to another person that was doing a medical conference in a slightly adjacent field. So then it kind of grew from there.
In that first contact, did you specifically ask her for other clients, or did she come to you saying, hey, I know somebody who needs some work?
Yeah, she came to me. I actually did personal work for her, and then from that it went to all of her clients too. But Veronique, I know, has a lot of good insight on this as well.
Yeah, so probably 70% of our clients are outside Pensacola. And that started it's like a dirty word in the design industry, but when I first bailed and had no idea what I was doing, it got to the point where I was like, oh crap, I left with a couple of friends, we decided to start our own company, we had no idea what we were doing. We started working with a couple people, and they were they were those red flag clients. It didn't work out. So I started doing stuff on what was Elance at the time and is now Upwork. And a lot of times people were like, oh, the job sites are going to be fighting people in completely different markets that can work for $10 an hour, and that's great pay. But you can actually make some really good connections on those sites and build up a really solid base of clients. I know Johnson & Johnson I think they use Upwork's premium platform now. I made a connection there where the woman was running her own inbound marketing agency, and she left there and is now one of the head people at the educational, they teach agencies how to use LinkedIn. She's one of the head people there, and now we do regular work with LinkedIn. So like Rachel said, it's really about making good relationships with people, and you will be able to be spread out like crazy. Most of our clients are in Dallas, but I came from there, so that kind of makes sense. But a ton of them are in New York, and then in California as well, and kind of all over the place. And that's the beautiful thing about what we do. You can work with anybody anywhere in the world. Through connections, we were in, last year we were in Lagos, Nigeria, running a brand workshop because of people that I've stayed in touch with over time and built relationships with. So it's just about, and one of the things you really have to be doing when you work for yourself is you don't have an account executive between you and the client. You have to learn how to reach out to people and to talk to people and to sell yourself, because nobody else is going to do it. So I think one of the biggest things is putting yourself out there. And I used to feel like I was going to puke if I had to get on a phone call with a client, because I was terrible about that sort of stuff. And it gets easier over time, but you really have to force yourself into those situations.
Thank you.
I mean, you were at Design Excel, but Pander, they actually have like workshops about their mural design company, but they're big believers in like pitching. Yeah.
So actually I have a friend that I used to work with at an agency, and she now runs a group in Bentonville, Arkansas, and their main client is Walmart. She sent me, Phoebe and Roxy of Pander sent her their pitch deck and an email to reach out to her. And we're like, hey, we'd love to talk to you. We think we'd be a great fit for your clients because they do a lot of trade shows. She emailed me their thing. She was like, hey, because I do some mural stuff. She was like, oh, their work reminds me of you. I was like, I know who they are. They're amazing. But like, they're like that aggressive about reaching out to people. And I mean, now they have people that are painting for them. You know, they're just basically becoming the business and client hunting side.
Right.
So yeah, if you don't reach out to people, they don't know you exist.
All right. How do you weed out good or bad clients? And what are the warning signs or red flags?
They will not sign a contract. They will not pay at least 50% deposit or hesitate on that. Those have been the biggest things. If somebody will not sign a contract and beyond that pay a deposit, then never work with them. And a lot of times, like, you will get those clients that are, you know, there are cases where the client is right, but if people are nitpicking things to death and going over and over, and they are literally somebody that wants to stand behind you and move the mouse for you, that might not be the client for you. And you learn from those projects, and then you can decide not to work with that person again, and you will slowly kind of narrow your realm of clients that are really good fits down, that makes sense for you. So.
Yeah, I just recently started a whole new intake process of clients, and it seems to be working well. So I'll kind of share that process with you guys. But ultimately, I have people contact me through my website or social media or whatever, and a lot of people think that a logo is worth a couple $100 or a website is worth a couple $100, and so you're going to waste a lot of your own time and their time if you're going back and forth emailing them. And then just to ultimately find out that they can't afford you or that they don't value what you do. So I've just started immediately requesting a phone call with them. I'm not going to go in this back and forth email crap. And so a lot of times the red flag is if they won't call you, or if you get caught in a phone tag situation back and forth a lot, I feel like. And then I think you can tell a little bit about their personality from a phone call, or if you want to do a video call, that's even better. And then just immediately getting straight to the point of what is your budget for this? And if they won't answer you, I think that's a really big red flag. Some people think that you're just fishing for their budget or whatever, which I get, but just being able to start that conversation with them about, are we talking something high end or low end, and just kind of getting a little bit of their budget information from them. And if you can't, then I would say that's definitely a red flag, and the type of client that is going to be cheap and want to nitpick and be super demanding of you. So I would say an easy way to weed them out is just to ask for their budget immediately.
Guys, are there any other questions that you ask for your first?
Yeah, it'll be why do you want a new website, or why do you think you need a new logo or whatever, and that stuff is pretty telling too, if they're just somebody told me I needed to update my website or whatever, that kind of answer, versus it doesn't represent me and my business well, or something like that. You can tell. It's just a matter of reading people, really. But I just think the quickest one is getting them to talk about if they value the work that you do or not.
So real quick, being an entrepreneur and being a graphic designer, being a freelancer, and dealing with those kind of clients, part of it is weeding them out. What do you say to them when they say, I really want to work with you, but can we get a discount or something like that? How do you weed that out? Because that's a hard thing for people to do, to say, because they won't, and then they'll say, I'll do it for this. So how do you say that? How do you handle that?
Thanks for that hard question, Nancy.
Yes, moderate, right?
I don't know. I mean, it definitely comes with experience too. Like Veronique said, the more you do something you're uncomfortable with, the more comfortable you get with it. And I've just gotten to a point where it's like, if they're not going to value what I do, then I don't even care. Like, it's just not a good fit. But that's also because I have enough work and I don't need them as a client. I'm not like in a struggling position. So that goes back to creating the runway and planning, setting up your business plan, forward thinking, so that you can be in a position to make those decisions and pick and choose your clients based on who's going to be a good fit instead of taking on the ones that are going to be a pain in the butt.
If I have an answer. No, it was like, we get this all the time though. And it's not necessarily like a red flag client, it might not be the client for you. So we have people that call all the time and they're like, I mean, we'll even people have called like, hey, do you make logos? And that's a little bit of a red flag up front where I'm like, and I'll be like, yeah, you know, we do branding. What can I help you with? How can I help you? You know? And sometimes people will come in and they'll be like, hey, I have this thing that I drew and I just need it to look good. And that's not bad. Like, I'm not going to make somebody feel bad for that. They have this task and they don't have the skills to make it happen. So I'll be like, you know, I'll say, you know, usually we go in and we work in the conceptual phase, and it's probably a lot more than what you need. It sounds like you need somebody to bring your idea to life, and I have a list of a few people that I send them to. And I just explain, like, you know, you don't need something from our services. It's probably going to be overkill for your project and low budget that you don't need to spend on this. And if people come in and start talking about, you know, logo design and stuff like that, I kind of ease them into the conversation of, we don't just do one-off logos and this is why. You know, we don't want to create a logo and hand it off to somebody because often they don't know what to do with it. So at the very base, we build out brand systems that might be, you know, iterations of the logo, basics of messaging, your palette, your fonts, you know, your overall look and feel. So then, and a couple core elements, so you have something to take and actually, you know, create something with it. So it doesn't just become this Frankenstein hodgepodge thing where you bring it to a print shop and they kind of take the brand and interpret it one way. And when you explain it that way, like, it might not make sense for that person, they might not have the budget for it, but then they get it. And it doesn't make them, it's just not a good fit for them at the time. And at the same time, you know, you can refer them to somebody that might be able to help them at the capacity that they're at. You know, so it's just a way of how you phrase it and explain, you know, what you do, and then they get it. So they're like, oh, okay, I understand. You're kind of bringing this bigger picture value. I might not be there yet, but I always like referring people out, you know, if it's not a good fit for us.
Yeah, I definitely have had some clients that there have been some red flags that, like they said, if they don't have a budget, but also if they have no idea what they're looking for. If they're like, I'll know it when I see it, it's usually a red flag because chances are they do know what they want, but they don't know how to communicate it. And so you'll go through several rounds of revisions, and I'm sure all of you have experienced this, with just no solution in the end because they had a vision in their head that you couldn't match because you don't know what that vision is. Another red flag is when they have someone else's work that they just want you to basically copy. And I think it's important to really educate them on why that's not appropriate and why that wouldn't even work for their business as well. Like, it would not make them unique, it wouldn't make them stand out, it wouldn't help further their business goals. So I think the educational component is really important because, I mean, something that I have to learn and that is really important is to know that they don't know about design, right? That's why they're coming to you, because they have no idea about it. So they're not going to be upset if you educate them a little bit on what it is that you're offering or why you're making the design decisions that you're making. I find that they actually respect you more for it. But another one is deadlines. If they don't have a reasonable deadline, that's a big red flag because they'll need it yesterday, and that kind of just wears you down over time. And I think everyone's probably had some clients like this, is that it's just always, they're always behind, which makes it you're always behind. And if they're not organized enough to communicate with you in an effective, timely manner, then there's no way that you can live up to the expectations that they have. So I think kind of establishing a timeline up front is super important as well.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, the whole thing you said about educating them, which is educating them about like your whole process, what you do, why it's valuable, and also that will translate into why it's expensive and why the timeline needs to be longer. And a lot of that kind of stuff of them thinking a logo is only worth a couple $100 or they think it can be done in 2 days is just because they legitimately don't understand the process. So education is a huge part of it, and if you are confident in yourself and your work and able to convey that to them and actually explain what you do and why, it kind of relieves a lot of those problems.
I'm trying to form this in my mind, so I'm sorry to make myself this kind of confusing. But obviously somebody has to work with like these low budget, sometimes red flag clients. And if one of you guys have been in that position before, how much do you give away from your process, right? Like steer off of it to like appease them because like you need money? Or do you just stay strict? Like, what's the balance between that? Do you have any?
Like you don't want to set a precedent for trading or discounts
Yes.
one way or the other, but you gotta get your start somewhere, or you gotta get back on the bike,
Yeah.
you know.
Have you been in that situation or know what to do?
Oh, I've totally done like a $300 logo. But I'm saying that is not something I would recommend right now, because you're going to be churning and burning out like a ton of stuff and kill your soul very quickly. But like I have absolutely done that sort of stuff. When I was first getting started, I would probably be working on 20 tiny projects at once. And I mean, I learned a lot from that. I learned what worked for me, what didn't work and fit within my lifestyle, and what I wanted to be doing as far as like my career. But it's that work that you like doing versus the, oh crap, I need to get the bills paid, So I think a lot of the stuff we're saying is, ideally this is how we want to be building our businesses, but, everybody's probably doing stuff on the side at the start that's not completely ideal to get themselves off the ground, So I think I would say like putting the work out there that you want to be doing is, really how you attract the kind of clients you want and the kind of quality you want. And that's the goal, but people always do think if you need to do stuff, probably saying things I shouldn't be saying right now, but if you need to be doing things that are small projects on the side to pay the bills so you can be doing those bigger projects, I mean, that's your own personal decision, I think.
Yeah, and I think all of us, I'm pretty sure, do that. Like, you do have to take on the crap job sometimes. You just have to figure out when it's worthwhile, I think, and like drawing the boundaries like early on with the client. Like if you're going to do it for free or for discounted rate or something, you need to outline on your invoice, this is what I would normally charge and this is the discount I'm giving you or whatever, because I want to help you out because you're a nonprofit or whatever the situation is, so that they know the value you're providing them. And also setting boundaries with them on the timeline or the deliverables. Instead of doing a full brand project, make them understand that they're literally just getting a logo and they're getting these specific files or whatever. So I think just setting the expectations on small jobs like that is really important. They don't go off the rails completely, because I mean, I think we've definitely all had that happen many of times. Or maybe you get into something because you're trying to help somebody out, or you want to be nice, or you feel bad for them or whatever, which happens, and we all do it. And I do a lot of projects for free or for discounted for friends or nonprofits or causes that I care about. But again, goes back to having the time and the money set aside to do those things.
Yeah, so I think also one of the things that take into consideration, if you start working for somebody at a certain rate, it's very hard to raise those rates. That's kind of the expectation that people are going in with. So like when I was doing things on online sites and things like that, I was doing a bunch of stuff for a lower rate, and then I would start upping my rates. So I'd be charging, $30 an hour or something, and then I upped it to $50, and then I upped it to $75. And I would take those stair steps and then gain the clients at a higher rate and then filter out the ones that were lower, because you're not going to bring a client from here to here, very rarely, unless they absolutely love you and have massive budgets. but they probably don't have those budgets if they're working with you down here in the first place. So you can stair step and start here and then work up and filter out until you have, you know, that pool, that healthy pool of higher paying clients that you might be doing less or larger projects for instead of a ton of little ones.
Did that answer the question?
It did. I have another question, but I'm afraid to ask it.
Don't ask it.
Don't ask it or ask it?
Oh, don't be afraid.
Don't. There was a comma in there.
Well, no, that did answer that. Thank you. Because you said, you know, have to show the work that you want to be doing to make that work. You could be working with these low-income clients and making like crappy work, and you don't have any good work to show to get the good clients and good jobs you have. So let's say you're in that situation. How do you wait to find a good job to have a good project?
Just make it.
Just make it.
Nobody,
I agree, but it is really hard to just make a project for no reason. Like,
oh, well,
you can't say it's not.
I'm gonna fight you here. Because if you want to be doing, I'm sorry, like one of the reasons that I came from outside Pensacola and I had a, you know, hefty portfolio, but this is a very weird town and you don't get in here unless you know people. So I was already established and I did a self-initiated project. And the wife of the guy who started Perfect Plane noticed it, and that's how I got in there, which is basically was my hopping point off to kind of become more established in Pensacola. So like when you're students, you're making your own projects. There's no reason you can't be making projects of the work you want to do as a professional. You do it all the time.
Okay, but I'm talking about like full-on projects, not just like how we've both done like social media challenges or whatever, where you like do a topic and post every day. That kind of stuff is great for your portfolio, but it's not necessarily a realistic project depending on what you do. But I think, yeah, I mean, just to create, like if I say I'm gonna come up with a business and make a logo for it or whatever, which is what some people do, like my brain does not work like that. Like I need like the restrictions and like a description of the project and stuff.
Like a deadline.
Yeah, a deadline especially, that's a huge key. But I think with a lot of my freelance work, I've taken on stuff either for free or for cheap from like friends or acquaintances I've made, and then I end up with really good work only because I lay ground rules first and say, basically, if you want me to do this for free, you're gonna let me have free reign on the project and you're not gonna like nitpick and try to creative direct and all that. So that just goes back to setting boundaries. But I think you can have real world projects like that and help people out and help yourself build your portfolio too.
Yeah, I think that in my previous job, a lot of the things I did was production work, but it is what you make it to be at the same time, because yeah, some of the requests that would come in were very mundane and I could have been boring, right? But I would think, well, I really want to practice hand lettering, so I'm gonna hand letter this. Maybe maybe it is a little bit of my personal time, but then I put in the extra time, so I make that piece stand out a lot more. And maybe they don't care at the end if I had put in that extra work, but now it's a usable project for me to put in my portfolio. And to get into new spaces, I mean, I've done what Rachel said. I've done stuff for free. I'm not saying that everyone should do work for free. I think that it's kind of a case-by-case basis. But for me, I really wanted to try some murals. And so Morgan and I actually did some mural work for free, but it was fun because it imposed a deadline, but we had artistic freedom. And it kind of gave us something new to start doing. So I think that's really you have to be really careful with free work. But I think that as long as you go in with eyes wide open, then it'll be okay if you want to try to get into a new space. But don't get taken advantage of, because that's really easy for scope creep to happen, and we all know about that. But yeah, so I think taking whatever project you're currently working on and taking it to the next level is the thing that helped me the most as far as helping my skills, honing them.
And I think another good thing you can do is if you have in-house design projects like that, or even freelance projects where maybe you've presented multiple logos or whatever, and sorry for the people who aren't like brand or web designers because we keep using these references, but that's what I know. So just relate it back to your own experience. So if you present 3 logos or whatever and they end up picking one that wasn't your favorite, like take the time to develop that and build it out into a brand, and you can show that in your portfolio even if it wasn't actually used in real life. And I know I have tons of files and folders worth of stuff that never saw the light of day but was actually really cool. So just making sure that you archive that stuff and remember to put it out too.
What?
So we talked a lot about like value and like knowing your worth. Conversation that I haven't had, even though I got my bachelor's in art, is like pricing. Like, how do you know like your actual monetary like value? I've researched it. It's very vague. I know it's about based on like each individual, but if you could give some insight, that would be very helpful for me.
Do you want to flip to our resources slide?
So pricing is like the weird question that everyone always asks. And part of the problem is I think because designers are not often very open about their pricing. And they're, somebody that's coming straight out of school is not going to be charging the same as somebody who's been doing it for 15 years. It's really weird because we will tell clients our pricing. Everybody will be very open with clients, but they're not open with each other. I would ask other designers that are doing similar things to you in your market what they're charging. I think that's a good base for it. There's some really great resources like it's not up here. Oh, is that at the Pricing and Ethical Guidelines is a really good one. They give the common costs for things all across the country. And it will give prices for like a pamphlet that's 3 pages versus 50 pages versus whatever in middle of nowhere versus in New York. So that's kind of a good place to start. Another thing with pricing, when you're getting started, start your price at a certain level and keep upping it. And you'll know your price is too high when people start saying no. So that's what I've always done, and it seems to work. So, but then after a while you'll get to a certain level where you're kind of capped up out in your market. One of the things that we struggle with, or that I struggle with personally, is we do a lot of stuff in New York and we do a lot of stuff here. Those are 2 very, very different price points for the market. So also kind of taking into account what people are charging in different markets. Reach out to designers in different markets that are make connections with designers in your different markets. Find out who's doing what on Instagram and make connections with people on Instagram in New York if you want to be doing work with me in New York. People will be pretty open about it if you talk to them about it, especially if they're not your direct competition here. And that's kind of how you can start gauging out what you should be charging.
Yeah, Michael Janda is a great resource too. He was at Design Excel, and he kind of breaks it down through different variables, but also kind of like the different types of clients that you have, like versus a client that you want to work for versus a client that is a pain in the butt. You kind of can vary your price on them too. So that's a great resource. He has a book and he puts a ton of content out on social that's very helpful.
Yeah, he's awesome.
So is it the top left one?
Yes, this one.
Yeah, there's like math in it, and a lot of he did it at Design Excel. He like broke it down here, and it's the same formula a lot of people use, but it was very.
Yeah, and so in the book, he actually has formulas for you to use and like pages that you can fill out to figure out what your hourly rate is going to be based on how much money you need to make to pay your bills or to pay for your office or to hire out other designers or creative people to help you. All that stuff is factored in his book, and it has helped me a lot. I just got it probably like 6 months ago, and it like completely changed the way that I thought about pricing. I think pricing is always a complicated subject no matter what, unfortunately.
Yeah, it really has a ton of variables. Chris Doe, also The Future on YouTube, he's a great resource. You don't want to sink all your time into something if you get no profit out of it. So one of his rules is that profit needs to be 10 to 30% markup. So I mean, that's really based on your skill level and what you can get. But yeah, I think that you have to live. So if you put in your hard costs, and I mean, you have a baseline for what you need to make. So then you kind of have to meet that, but you want to build in a little bit of profit in there too, or else it's not worth it. So I don't have an MBA, but if you go to, these are great resources. Also, there is Freelance in Business and Stuff, which is a book by the Hutzpah sisters. I actually have my copy here. It's a little bit worn, but this is it. And they also have some really good strategies as well. So I kind of think you can learn from all of them and then find out what works for you. And like Veronique said, that you kind of level up and push the boundaries, and that's how you get to different. I still have to figure it out. I'm still learning. But
I think for me too, it helps to think about it as like, what is your time really worth? Especially in my situation, like I work full time and then all of my freelance work is just on nights and weekends or whenever I can fit it in. So then it becomes more important, like how much is this hour of my time worth where I could be relaxing or spending time with my boyfriend or my family or whatever. Like it helps me to think about what is my time actually worth to take away from other things too. So maybe that helps.
I want to tie into this. I've had some experience with the market here in Pensacola, and I want to ask you guys your opinion and like the factual base of the market in Pensacola to your jobs you've had here, specifically like the work that's needed, especially the price range that you've seen or noticed, and the type of clients who are looking for work.
So, sorry, clarify, like what our opinions on just the general market here?
Oh, Pensacola. Yeah, price, client, work.
There is a lot of really good work that can be done here, and people have money to spend here. I think there's this kind of like myth that Pensacola doesn't pay. I think that it's a very small market, and you have to make a name for yourself to get the good projects, because it's a smaller market, and there's a few like big players here, and there's like a handful of people that everybody knows each other. So like you have to be plugged into the community, because everything is very referral based. I have a few people that we would recommend video for, and a few people that we recommend social media or SEO or whatever it is for, because everybody knows each other. So you have to be super plugged in to get those projects. Otherwise, there are a lot of people doing work for very cheap here, and people take advantage of that. But a lot of that is our fault, because people aren't raising the rates here and charging what they should be charging here, and that all that's doing is undercutting yourself and everybody else in this community. So, but you definitely have to kind of be loud here if you want to have access to those larger clients and projects.
Yeah, and I think we've all had a situation where we've bid on a project against other designers, and ultimately they picked the cheapest person, and that always sucks, and that happens a lot. But then that client just wasn't meant for you. Honestly, that's how I look at it. That's easy to say when you're in a position where you're not struggling for work, but I think, like Veronique said, being plugged in with the right people and figuring out like what your thing is, what you're really good at, and the thing that you do better than anybody else, or something that you do that no one else does, and that gives you more work opportunities. Because like Veronique and I are both designers, and we both work on brands and websites and stuff, but we are still able to work together because I can do development on the sites that she designs. So I think just figuring out like a way to kind of expand your horizons and different skills you can maybe learn, or ways that you can fit in to work with other creatives, especially.
Also, like, you need to be hanging out with and networking with the people that are actually going to buy things from you. So designers are really good about hanging out with other designers, but if you're not plugged into the business community, it probably doesn't matter. There are like a dozen big players in this market that know everybody and that refer people to everybody. So like going to the PUIP events or going to the studio community events. What's another one? Being around places like this.
Yeah.
Like this has, I'm not even BSing it, it's true. But being around places that have other people that are building businesses or plugged into the entrepreneurial community is one of the best things you can do for your business in Pensacola. Like, we will probably work here forever because it's such a great resource.
Startup Weekend is where I got a lot of my first initial clients, and some of them are still my clients now. So I think, like you said, the business community is really important to be plugged into, and also, like we've already said a million times, like putting your work out there and being known for a specific style or type of design or whatever that other people aren't doing. I know that's how Veronique kind of got her foot in the door with a lot of places.
On top of the, sorry, one more thing. So on top of just like showing up at networking things, actually give back. So I started off because I was at the collab, and Kelly Reeser was running Startup Weekend. So I was there, and I was, kind of the person there the only person that was doing branding and stuff. So I got pulled into Startup Weekend to be a coach on the brand and marketing side of things there. And then from there, got really plugged into UWF, and I do some of the judging for some of their pitch competitions and things like that. So that also allowed me to be super well connected to kind of make those connections with business people.
Yeah, and that goes back to just knowing when to do things for free, when to volunteer your time, and when it's actually going to be worthwhile for you. Like Startup Weekend was just a free event that I went to and helped somebody build their business and built a logo for them. So then a bunch of people saw that I did that logo, and I got a lot of referrals from that. So I think just kind of weighing like the value in certain things, and I think doing stuff for the community and volunteering, like Veronique said, is always it's a good thing to do in general. It makes you feel good, it helps people out, but then it also gets your name out there too.
Yeah, I think that you kind of have to, you can think of it and have a strategy for it and know that this could lead to other things, and be giving and don't, I think that sometimes we are scared to give away things, and I understand that, but I think that if there is a potential for return on investment, give it your all when you are giving away those things. And soft skills are really important. So being able to connect with people and just being kind and not seeing everybody as a potential client, selling yourself, because people can really feel that and see through it, but just making genuine connections and just wanting to be someone's friend. And those pay off a lot more than, just trying to like flat out sell yourself. So that's what I found that helps me the most, is just being as genuine as I can and just being true to the values that I hold, and the work will come.
People work with people they like.
Yeah.
Yeah, in terms of like a strategy, I know you guys said you kind of winged it a little bit at first, but at what point, there was a point where you had to realize that you needed more strategic about it, right? And how that kind of...
We talked like last week, right?
Yeah.
We only put out brand work on our site, but we put out brand work as far as like full case studies.
Yeah.
So it's more saying, okay, we focus on branding, or we're looking at projects from a brand first perspective. So what is right for the brand when we're building a website? How are we taking the brand's messaging and the whole vibe of it and turning that into an online experience? So it's keeping that whole brand thing front and center, but when you go into like one of our case studies, there's like, okay, this is how we executed it in social media and then executed in the website. So that's kind of been the approach that's worked for us.
thought process, that's right.
Yeah, so just how we do a lot of different stuff, but this is kind of like the core of where all of our decisions are made.
Yeah, I think it's definitely not easy to figure out like where the demand is and where you're going to get actual income from, and also the stuff that you want to do, and it takes a very long time to figure that out. For me, it's taken years to figure that out, and I finally feel like I'm starting to make progress. But I think allowing yourself to try like all different kinds of projects first, and don't feel like you have to niche immediately, and see how they go, see which ones you like more than others, and then eventually, like Veronique, figure out what your thing is, and then only show that on Instagram, your website, everywhere, and then eventually that's what you become known for. But that doesn't mean that you can't take on other projects too. You're just showing those branding projects. And I think that's a big thing that people don't really talk about is we all do craft work. We all do stupid little projects that we don't want to do. Like, I have to do digital ads all the time, and I absolutely hate doing them. But I'm not going to show that anywhere because I don't want to pull in that type of work. Yeah.
And you can also have like different, so we have our main capabilities deck is based off of brand projects and kind of the executions, full executions across different categories for those. We have different capabilities decks for like if somebody is a specific, we're targeting like an illustration client or a mural client or you know, whatever it is. You can have different sets of examples of your work as well. So that it doesn't become this like giant thing that you hand off that has like
yeah, I definitely agree. Yeah, not saying like you can do every type of design possible to the world, like being a generalist, but also not like being so specific that you only can pull in a few clients. I think it's hard to find that balance of where that is, but I think having different segments that are tailored to different type of people, like I do a lot of different things. I do branding, and then I do web design and web development, which is a lot, honestly. It's hard to kind of like manage all those things, but I get those type of clients from different places. So I think just figuring out where you're going to find those clients from and targeting them there, like whether it's LinkedIn or something, you're going to target specifically web development projects or whatever. Just kind of like try some things like that and put it out and see what works and what doesn't.
I guess just to launch off on that, when you were kind of expanding into, you find kind of what you want to do, there's kind of like an idea that saying no makes room for the clients that are going to say yes. So when you did public, I guess, low or smaller stuff, when you did bigger brand stuff, you knew you wanted to transition to that. How practical was that? Saying no to those people until you get the yes.
So that happened over like 10 years though.
Okay.
Like when I was doing just like little one-off logos things, it was like, oh crap, I quit my job, I have to make money. That was a really long time ago. So I think from going there to actually, when I pushed everything towards Hatchmark, I definitely made, and I think even for a while on the website we had kind of like one-off projects and stuff like that. It was probably 4 years ago or so when I pulled all that stuff and went towards fuller brand projects. And that does a lot to filter out, like, because if somebody's going to be finding you online or even finding you through a referral, they're going to go look at your work. And if you don't have a bunch of one-off logos on your site, most of the time they're going to realize, oh, okay, this is going to be, more than I need. It's probably going to be a higher priced package or something like that. We still get people call like, hey, I just need you to recreate a logo. But that does do a lot for that. So, when we put things out on Instagram now, we will spend 1 to 2 weeks showing one project. So it's a brand and it's not just the logo, it's how it builds out into everything. So, that does a lot for filtering and for people kind of understanding what your focus is. But it took
kind of push that idea of this is what I do. You just kind of show it over and over again.
Yep.
All right. We have some questions. Oh,
You got a question?
One more question behind you.
go ahead.
I listen to a lot of Christo in the future, and he makes a very big point to be a specialist in like one thing. Like, are you a graphic designer? Like for me, like, oh, I'm a graphic designer and illustrator. He would be like, no, pick one. Like, pick one of them. And in the case where you're looking for work and you can't really, it's kind of hard to pick exactly one thing because you're trying to branch out as much as possible. Do you believe in like creating multiple, like, I don't know, Instagram accounts or portfolios to showcase different work? Or do you believe in kind of putting it all in one thing?
I don't agree with Chris. I don't know if that's okay to say. But no, I guess it depends on your approach. Like, what do you want to be doing? Do you want to just be doing illustration or do you want to just be doing brand work? When I take a look at brand work, Brand work includes logos and often includes illustration. We have people, like we do a ton of illustration work, and a lot of times people come to us specifically for a brand because it's something that plays into the illustration really well. So it marries well together. I really don't think that design necessarily has to like live in silos away apart from each other. Like I got really heavy into hand lettering for a while, and I still love it. I haven't had time to touch a pen and pencil or paper for a while, but like that skill set really allowed me to learn how to work that into branding to create like hyper customized, you know, lettering focused brands. So that really works together, and I think you can build a very specific and very like sought out style or skill set when you start to play with multiple things.
Well, let me make it more complicated because I went to school for film, and then I went into photography, and then I went to graphic design. So like I have experience with like all three, and I love doing all three. And it's hard to put that together, really, because a lot of people just see me as a graphic designer. Like I can also do photography, but when people are looking for something, they're looking just for a designer or just for a photographer.
One of the biggest reasons that I hired Liz, who works with me, is because she's an amazing designer and great at layout, and she also does photography. Like, so, I mean, I don't know that that's necessarily a bad thing. Sure, on Instagram accounts, you're probably not gonna have your, you might wanna create a separate account for photography versus design, but I wouldn't like hide one or the other from clients. Like you can have multiple tabs on a website that's design work, photography work, you know, video work, if you're doing them all well. Like if one of them's just for fun and you're like, oh, probably not the best at this, you probably shouldn't be putting it out there. But I think everybody here has done a little bit of everything. That's how you grow really strong skill sets.
I think that over time, you kind of just go from like general to specific, right? We all start with a bunch of different skills, and then we kind of one just dominates the other and takes over. I think that, I mean, it's just going to take time, but I don't think you should hide those skills if you have them. I think that that can be very valuable. Certain businesses are looking for someone that can do a variety of skills because, you know, they might not need to have a full video production staff as well as like a full branding studio. So I think that that can be very valuable.
Yeah, I think just like making it more of like a clear like package maybe would help people wrap their mind around it. Like a lot of what we do is like kind of like a digital persona package, which will encompass a lot of things like web design, development, social media, digital ads or whatever, and that's a lot of like totally unrelated random stuff, but figuring out how to package it in a way that makes sense to people and they can see like all of the different value that you're providing them, and I don't think there's a reason to split it up. And I think it's important to note too that you can niche in terms of like your service offerings, but you can also niche in other ways, like in terms of your style or like a particular thing that is unique to you. I think that's kind of what helps me because I do a lot of different stuff, is like having a specific style that people expect.
That makes sense. Thank you.
All right, we have some questions from our live stream. Cheyenne McMahon says, hashtag relatable content. Passion projects are hard to get motivated on when you work full-time in-house. What advice would you give to help these designers get back into their passion?
Okay, so what's worked for me in the past is having a big picture project. So I want to make this thing, and make yourself do one thing a week for X amount of weeks. So if it's like the letter project or whatever, by the time you're done with, you know, every letter, you have 26 different pieces that create a larger project. So kind of taking on these larger things and breaking it out into, okay, I'm gonna, like, you just did the same thing. You did a similar thing with the letter project, or you actually did it was the logo project, right?
Kind of in between. It was kind of like logo types.
Yeah, but it was one thing a week, and Rachel went in and used a bunch of stuff that wasn't used in client work and had like a whole piece that she started to push out, and then we're creating new stuff along with it. So building a bigger project out of baby pieces worked for me.
Yeah, and I think the accountability that goes along with that, of those like social media challenge type things, like people are sitting there like, you know, they're expecting you to post every day, and they're, especially once you get further into it, people kind of get like on the wagon and they're like, ooh, I can't wait to see what they're going to post next. And so that kind of like forces you to be accountable, because that's what I did with the lettering project, and it was honestly a nightmare. But I was spending a couple hours every night coming up with letters because I knew that I had to post one the next day. And I think just finding a way to make yourself accountable, whether it's posting it online or even finding a person that can make you accountable, or a group like Veronique and I did the Future Pro Group a long time ago, and that's how the conference was born out of that. But we started meeting once a week at Fosco, and every week we'd be like, this is what I'm going to work on. I'm going to work on building case studies for my site, or I'm going to work on this project or whatever. And every week we made just like a little bit more progress. So I think just finding a way to be accountable helps a lot.
Or if you want to do something really big, you can be like, hey community, I'm going to put up a mural, and make it really big and loud online, and then you're kind of tied into doing something huge. So peer pressure is a really great thing.
Also, I think your passion projects sometimes don't even have to be what you're doing for your day job. I think the most invigorating passion projects I've done is I really found a lot of enjoyment in doing murals. That's a lot of physical activity, and that's like making it real, right? Not always on a computer screen. Another thing, Long Hollow is a passion project. And that was just born out of a need to have some office space, some meeting space. And that kind of turned into, well, let's make this really cool. So we came up with a brand for it. Like we did the whole interior design on a budget for it. And my husband's a woodworker, so we kind of like handcrafted everything in there. And that is another use of our creativity, right? But it's not necessarily tied to like making exactly what you want to be making for your design day job, right? I'm not going to be building out miniature co-working spaces for the rest of my life, but it was a great experience, and I really enjoy doing it. And I think that you need to find something you enjoy doing that's going to invigorate you for your day job and push your boundaries, because I think we all get burnt out because we're kind of expected to have our creativity on tap, right? But we need to fill it back up, or else we're gonna be pretty dry. So I think find something that really feeds you, and it might not be in the typical way of like doing lettering or doing social media posts. I'm really bad at social media, so don't ask them. They're much better than I am. But yeah, so that's just my advice.
All right, we have another question from our live stream. Katie Butler. How do you recommend exposing yourself to different styles? What are some of your sources of inspiration to increase variety in styles? Website, social media feeds, Twitter, podcasts. So how do you recommend exposing yourself to different styles to get, I guess, invigorated, inspired?
Ooh, I'm not the one to ask.
Yeah, I don't think I am either.
I mean, there's the obvious question that's, you know, there's definitely the easy answer is kind of there's Instagram feeds dedicated to featuring great designers, and that's kind of a good way to discover new talent and to get a wide variety of inspiration in one place. I'm probably not the person.
Maybe even like, I don't know, I do a lot of Skillshare classes, and there's a lot of different styles on there for sure. And they usually have projects, and you're supposed to do something in whatever the teacher's style is, so maybe that would be a good exercise. I don't know, I don't think I'm good at being a chameleon of styles, so I don't think I'm the right person to ask.
Yeah, I mean, I think that online is where we find a lot of our inspiration, but there are so many different designers. I mean, there's a niche for everything, right? So I think that you kind of just do your research and start going down the rabbit hole and seeing where it leads. Like, I was really into Nikki Masani's mosaics forever, so I tried to do one myself. And it's just, if you get inspired by these people that you admire, then you kind of just try your hand at it. And I think that failing is a good thing, right? If you're not good at it, that's fine. Just keep trying, and if it's not fun, then move on to something else. I mean, I think that.
All right, since we're running out of time, we got 2 big questions we gotta ask. Worst thing about working for yourself, or your biggest pain point?
Start with the Rachels.
Biggest pain point, worst thing and best thing, time management, right? Like, yeah, you get to work from home or you get to work for wherever you want, but that also usually means that you take it with you everywhere you are. So I've been in Portugal working on design projects. I've been in like Peru answering client emails. So I mean, yeah, I got to go to those places, but like, because I don't have to worry about PTO, but at the same time, I have to bring it with me. So it kind of takes away from the experience. So I think those are pluses and minuses. So it can be a big pain point for me, especially like if you have a spouse. That's also really difficult too, to turn it off.
Yeah, I mean, I think my answer is kind of the same. It's just not being able to get away from your work. Because I know, like, we probably all love what we do, so we get really invested in it and want to do it all the time, but at a certain point, you have to step away from it. And I think there's a lot of, for me, a pain point is just, like, wasted mental and creative energy on stupid tasks that I don't want to be doing, like emailing clients or project management, invoicing clients, all of that kind of stuff that you don't really think about until you get into it. You don't realize how much time it actually takes up out of your day. And that stuff just like kills me. It just like eats away all the creative energy. So, I mean, I think that's the worst thing, because at Hale Studio, I mean, we have a project manager and she handles all that, and I just get to focus on the fun, creative stuff. So I definitely say wasted mental energy is a big pain point.
I totally agree. Well, it's not the worst thing for me, because I found so I used to hate dealing with people and doing outreach and networking and all that sort of thing. Like, if I could do that all day now, I'd be completely happy doing that. Like, I love that sort of stuff. It's fun for me. I like meeting new people. I like, doing that whole business development side of thing. If you just want to be designing, like, freelancing is probably not the thing for you. Because I probably, like, it's a little bit different because I've got a small team now. So I've got other people to pick up on the design. So I probably, on some days I might spend 25% of my time designing, maybe. So I think when you're going into freelance and then potentially kind of like building into a small business, you're not going to be spending all that time designing, which is probably the reason you got into it in the first place, because you love that so much. So it is definitely kind of, going back to figuring out like what are your goals as far as doing this whole thing. And if you want to be, just working as a designer 100% of the time, it's not what you're going to be doing. And there is no turning off. Like, there are boundaries. Like Ramsey and I were talking about this earlier. Like, you could be like, no, clients, you can't contact me after 5:30, or I'm not working after 5:30. But clients, like, if you have a 10 o'clock deadline the next morning, it's not your client's fault if your day got like blown up by emails and phone calls. Like, you're going to be working from your couch the night before till midnight. And that kind of is on you. There's nobody else that you can pass that off to. You don't have a whole team of people around you. So that's, good, bad, depending on how you look at it. You also kind of have that freedom. Me and my family went to Japan 2 years ago over the holidays, but again, at the same time, like, somebody was working on stuff here, but something happened and I was up at 3 o'clock in the morning because of the time change, emailing with clients. So, yeah, good and bad.
Well, let's stick with the good on this one. What is the best thing about working for yourself? Last question of the night.
It's a lot of pressure. I mean, conversely, be in control of your time. Like, I do have the opportunity to manage my own time, and I think that that is something that you can easily take for granted, but after coming from an in-house position, I really, really value that, because I really feel like I have more time to make sure I'm managing my health and make sure I'm doing the amount of like learning and reading that I need to be doing, because going to work every day and you have all that commute time, and then you also have meeting time, and you kind of have time that you feel like is wasted, but you don't have to deal with that when you work for yourself. So that's the nice part. And approval processes is nice, because if you're just working for yourself directly with a client, your approval process is much smaller because it's just, how do you like this? Okay, I can change that. Versus working in-house, you have to go through several different managers or different higher ups, and that can be a big time suck. And it can also, the project can be killed at any point, and then all that time did feel wasted. So I do appreciate those points.
I kind of had two answers. I think the big one for me is being able to build relationships with clients directly and build long-term relationships with them. So, I mean, I'm a very introverted person, and I don't want to be in a situation where I'm constantly like taking on new clients and meeting new people and just like the constant turnover. I like to actually like be invested in someone and be invested in their business and become like an actual partner with them, versus when you work at an agency, you're probably just doing projects here and there. You might not even meet the client, and you have to go through, like you said, all the hoops and different levels, and it's just really fun to be able to help someone build their business and be like have a personal relationship with them. And kind of going off of that, just being able to take ownership of your work, where when you work in an agency, your creative director or another designer or somebody else might be taking credit for your work, or your work is kind of a blend of everyone's ideas, whereas with freelancing, you literally do everything. All the strategy and the ideas and the execution and everything all came straight from you. And I think that is a really hard way to go, like not working with a team, but it is really fulfilling once you get the final project done and you're like, wow, like I really did that by myself. Like it's a cool thing, I think.
Okay, so there is, like we're all saying, like, okay, everybody kind of still is doing these projects probably, that aren't like the most exciting ones all the time, but ultimately you really do have a lot of control over the type of stuff that you want to be producing. And at a certain point, you're able to kind of really get picky about the kind of clients that you want to be working with, or at least, be putting the stuff out there that's attracting the type of clients you want to be working with, which is pretty fun. But my most, like, the thing that I love the most, and this is like coming from a brand thing again, but my favorite thing is really working with somebody that's like, hey, I'm going to be starting this business, and they're starting from like square zero. And you're able to be part of that process the whole way through, and it's really cool to get somebody from here to like here. And one of the coolest things that, like, when we opened up Ride Society, or worked with Ride Society to launch, and actually with like the brewery that my husband and I just did, like, people are like, who did this? Is this part of is it part of a chain or something like that? Because like Claire opened and she looked like she was part of like an existing organization that was like huge. But like you can fake a lot with branding, and you can make people look much more established than they already are. And that is super exciting for me, because that helps people get started, like, levels above than they might have. So that part's really fun for me. I like being part of that process and making people start off and look awesome and sound awesome and market awesome. So it's fun.
Thank you very much, ladies. Give them a round of applause, please. I want to say thank you to Ryan O'Keefe for live streaming for us, sir. Cowork MX, Hatchmark Studios, Zap Industries, Rogue Design, and me, the Ramsey. If y'all have any questions, we'll be around for a little while. Y'all have a wonderful night. Thank you very much.